prompt was, the kindest, most compassionate version of me finds time to regularly care for myself by ... So, Dr. Erin, tell us, what was your experience with this and what came through?
Well, this is where that whole idea of boundaries comes through. And to be honest, it was a real flood of ideas that was coming out on to the page, because boundaries, I think, might be coming up for a lot of us. Certainly 2020 has been a year of like radical shifts in how we navigate our world. And so that brings up, boundaries play a role in, how you meet your neighbor, how, like within our clinic, how patients are coming through and navigating space. We literally have pages and pages of guidelines, which are ultimately boundaries around how we're designed to interact with one another, which spilled over into other thoughts about, well, how has this changed our relationships? And there's a lot of feelings that are coming up from people, like, there was different phases in our understanding of how the pandemic is playing out. And we're moving into the holiday season, which maybe normally was a time that we would be connecting more frequently with friends and family. And someone wise, I don't know who it is, but somebody wise said to me, boundaries are a place we come to meet. And so that perspective on boundary setting has always stuck with me, because we can often feel conflict sometimes about like the need to set up a boundary is the need to defend or protect. And that led me down another well of thinking of, okay, well, what do our boundaries do for us? And so they can serve us, they can protect our needs. And okay, like we have human needs. And so as a naturopathic doctor, how do I set up boundaries for my clients on a regular basis? Am I helping them with boundaries around, well, this idea that, boundaries come up for us in relationships. So what is our relationship with food? What is our relationship with self-care? How are we setting up boundaries so that in this 24-hour day, we have the opportunity to meet those needs? So on one level, I think boundaries are, okay, very simple. They're putting this concrete idea, and then they're allowing us to create momentum, right? So like in a community setting, in the grocery store, we have boundaries around how we're supposed to interact so that we can go through and like meet these needs. And then I think where the conflict arises, like internally, or when we start to feel that tension, is when a boundary that is supporting one need, comes in conflict with another boundary that's supporting another need. So for example, in my personal life, there's like all this talk about, okay, well, holiday planning, I've got the senior generation, so the grandparents of my kids who are, for lack of a better word, a little bit bored, and they're wanting connection. And then there's my family, my husband and my kids and I, who are, challenged with other boundaries in our life because we don't necessarily have the supports from community that we used to. So we had tighter boundaries around our time and our ability to engage in these other, functions. So a boundary that was once here is maybe now here. But then how do I create that space where, I still have this need and desire to connect with my family, to create space for these relationships, to receive, that support. And I think for all of us, if we imagine instead this idea, well, like, it's not about defending, but it's about creating an area where we can come to meet, and going into it with that type of perspective, it's really disarming and it allows for more open communication. I mean, not that we ever have control over how the other person is going to respond or how the world is going to respond to where our boundaries are. And at some point, sometimes we just have to set them because we have to put our oxygen mask on first. There's no other way around it. But what I was feeling in my own life and what I was hearing from, you know, clients and women in the world that I work with is just this idea that, well, they would, if they set that boundary, then they are, you know, afraid of rejection, afraid of loss. And ultimately, if we dig a little bit deeper, you know, is there another need that we are not, you know, that we need in our lives and aren't able to address? And so, especially in this interesting world where, you know, we have the mask and we have 2 meters apart and we're all confused, like, why can we go to the grocery store? Like, there's all those jokes on the internet. Why can we, you know, can't get together with the family, so let's go meet in aisle 3 of Walmart at 12 p.m., right? Right? So people are confused, I think. I know, because, but the need, like, we still have we have to meet the basic human needs of, like, feeding our bodies and taking care of ourselves. And then on another level, we're dependent on all of these other humans behind the scenes to run all the things, right? Like, I just watched the TTC go by, and somebody's got to be, you know, operating that and whatnot. And yet, how then do we create this other boundary around protecting our physical need for protection against the virus? So all I can say is it's a really interesting time to think about your boundaries. Absolutely. And boundaries, yeah, and they can be so helpful to get to know yourself better and to really think about where your core beliefs and values are on so many different